Anyone who has ever said that video games don't count as art has clearly never played the 2018 God of War. With the release of God of War on PC, a whole new market has the chance to experience one of the greatest gaming releases of the past decade. Sony Santa Monica's God of War is a technical masterpiece from start to finish, and it's the only game that I've ever personally played where, pending you don't ever die, you can experience the journey with no loading screens. But aside from just that, it's a deeply emotional story about a father and a son growing and learning to trust and rely on each other. Despite their differences, Kratos and Atreus create a true connection with each other, one that is forged by the passing of Faye, Kratos' wife and Atreus' mother. This story is epic, brutal, and deeply impactful for not only longtime fans of the franchise, but for newcomers as well. There was a different tone to the game, one that saw the traditionally rage-filled Kratos with a more subdued and somber tone. We see throughout the game how he struggles to help his son overcome his grief at the loss of his mother, while overcoming his own grief and dealing with the demons of his past as the ghost of Sparta. While the game itself is a masterpiece, today we will be focusing on analyzing the opening moments of the game and how absolutely perfectly the team at Sony Santa Monica establishes the characters of Kratos and Atreus. I'm Christian, aka the PlatinumChin, and this is the 5-9 Gaming Direct analysis of the opening of 2018's God of War. But before we get started, I'd love it if you guys dropped a like and subscribe to the channel so that we can bring you more content like this. And also, we want you to leave a comment on some of your favorite scenes that you would like to see analyzed in future videos. Also, fair warning, there are minor spoilers in this analysis, so if you have yet to play the game, you might have some minor plot points revealed a little early. Alright, let's get started. As the scene opens, we see the looming figure of Kratos holding the Leviathan axe standing in front of a tree adorned with a golden handprint. However, instead of chopping down the tree immediately, Kratos kneels before the tree and places his hand over the print left on the tree, as if hoping for one last embrace with whomever left it, and rests his head upon it. As he does this, we hear the strings enter with a theme that represents Faye throughout the story. Appropriately titled Memories of Mother, the theme will come into play several times throughout the intro to the game and the story as a whole. We hear it anytime Kratos or Atreus finds themselves in their grief for their lost wife and mother. For fans of the series, this was a shocking turn for Kratos, as the God of War is suddenly a grieving man. As Kratos stands, a look of solemn determination washes over his face. He begins to hack the tree, and with 5 mighty blows severs the tree from its base. It's important to note here that with each successive blow, Kratos is seemingly filled with more and more anger at the situation. Despite there being a clear passage of time between the previous entries in the series and the moment we witness now, this is still the God of War, and his rage still burns deep inside. As the tree falls and Kratos moves towards it, we hear the strings move from the sweet mid-high range that sung Faye's theme to us to a lower register where they begin to churn out Kratos' theme. Right as his theme is ringing out, we see Kratos reach for the tree, and the bandages on his arm begin to unravel around his wrists. These bandages are covering up the markings permanently left by the Blades of Chaos, which were fashioned to Kratos in the previous games as a sign of his servitude to Ares of the Greek pantheon. But as Kratos looks at the bandages and winds them back around his forearms, we see him close his eyes. The God of War is taming his rage. This is also marked musically by the entrance of a heavenly choir, one which represents his struggle between Kratos' nature and his new life that he seems to have established for himself. It's here where we are introduced to Atreus, Kratos' son. This is an especially poignant moment in the storytelling of the moment. Atreus approached holding some sort of plant and clearly seeking Kratos' approval. However, Kratos, still in his moment of grief, keeps his back turned towards his son. This is one of the fantastic little moments in this introduction that shows us the distance that exists between Kratos and Atreus. It's told more explicitly later on that Kratos and Atreus did not spend much time together while Faye was alive. And here we are shown and not told that there isn't the traditional relationship between father and son. Kratos sternly tells Atreus, "Get in the boat, boy." And we see Atreus lower his head and accept his father's command. Atreus is clearly used to this kind of dismissal from Kratos, but does not dispute his father's wishes. Kratos then collects himself for another quick moment, while finalizing the replacement of the bandages across his forearms, now being backed by the low male choir again singing his God of War theme. These two parts of Kratos are at odds, and he attempts to manage the pain of his loss and his anger at the world that took the love of his life away. Kratos proceeds to lift the entire tree and walk it towards a small boat. Here, we see that Atreus walks ahead of his father, the physical distance here representing the emotional distance between the two. They reach the boat without a word, and the tension is only broken by Atreus asking a simple, practical question. Still want me to tie it to the boat? As Kratos places the tree into the water, he turns towards Atreus and says simply, "That is enough," keeping the conversation again to what is practical and, more importantly, impersonal. As the pair make their way downriver, Atreus breaks the silence by asking if something has changed, stating, "The forest feels different now." Kratos responds saying, "Everything is different, boy. Try not to dwell on it." Notice how, as Kratos delivers his line, they enter a cave created by the flow of the river. The cave creates a natural reverberation, bringing a weight to Kratos' line that would be unable to be felt in the forest itself. Here, we see the words ring throughout the small cave as they must be ringing in Atreus' mind. Everything is different now for these two. They proceed to remain silent for the rest of the boat ride, and during the proceeding, trek back up to their small cabin. One incredible detail here is that if you let the camera move without adjustment, the shot will get slightly wider and pan up in order to reveal the mountain that Kratos and Atreus will be climbing in order to spread Faye's ashes later in the game. Framing Atreus and Kratos in the silhouette of the monstrous peak is a fantastic foreshadowing of the immense physical and emotional journey that they will be taking together, and is one of the best bits of subtle foreshadowing in gaming history. As they near the cabin, Kratos tells Atreus that they have chopped down the final tree, and Atreus takes it as sort of a cue and rushes towards the cabin. Notice that as the camera follows him along, it lowers itself ever so slightly to bring us down to Atreus' level. We are in his part of the introduction of the story now. Atreus slowly opens the door, and it is revealed that his mother Faye's body is lying on the table inside, prepared for her journey to the great beyond. Sonny Suljic does some fantastic work here as he lets out a small sigh, knowing that this is the last time he will see his mother. His inner turmoil comes out even more as he slows the pace of his steps, each one taking just a tiny bit longer than the last. This brings the crushing weight of the moment down on the audience. A boy who is distant from his father and has lost his mother, and you feel his pain as he approaches her lifeless body. As Atreus reaches the table, he begins lighting candles and reciting the Valhalla prayer, a Viking prayer that supposedly grants the dead passage to Valhalla. Atreus recites this in a very weak voice, clearly still distraught by the fresh loss of his mother. After his prayer and lighting candles surrounding Faye's body, we see Atreus scatter the leaves of the plant he presented Kratos at the very beginning of this intro across her body. He then gently rests his head on her as a way of saying goodbye. At this point, we also hear a variation of the musical theme that was played when Kratos rested his head upon the tree, letting us know that this is the same character that our protagonists are grieving over, albeit without wanting to expose their pain to the other. If you look closely, you can even see the reflection of the tear stains on Atreus' face as he leans down to rest his head on his mother's body. As Atreus lifts his head and turns around, still wearing the tears of grief on his face, the camera pans to reveal Kratos as a huge, looming figure cloaked in shadow, underscored by Kratos' powerful God of War theme, again with the low male choir, but this time slightly more subdued than it was previously. This is how Atreus sees his father, powerful, but unknowable. The absence of Kratos in Atreus' life up to this point is represented in this one quick shot, with Kratos being nothing more than a shadow to his own son. As Kratos enters the room, he walks calmly towards the table, but we also see that he slows and stops short of the table himself. We also see Atreus quickly wipe the tears from his face. Again, both father and son doing their best to hide their grief from one another, despite having the same feelings about the same loss in their life. Atreus then informs Kratos that Faye's body is ready and takes his leave. As Kratos approaches the body of Faye, he looks at her with a softness that we have never quite seen from him throughout the franchise. As Kratos lifts her body, he also whispers to her, "Find your way home. You are free." Christopher Judge really nails the delivery here, giving a level of depth to this seemingly older, wiser, and more emotional Kratos. You hear the pain in Kratos' voice, despite the character's best attempts at remaining strong for his son and himself. There's even the slightest hint of a crack in his voice on saying the word free. Here, Kratos is in the same spot as Atreus. He knows these are his last words to Faye, and he can only do so much to hide his emotion. As Kratos lifts Faye's body, we hear that long, sweeping theme representing Faye rise again, this time more grand than ever. Every time that Faye's shadow has been cast over Kratos or Atreus, we have heard this theme. Now that they are moving her body to her funeral pyre, it comes in more pronounced than any time before, representing the magnitude of this moment and the feelings of loss that these gods are facing in the moment. We also hear this theme is now sung instead of played on an instrument, which is a compositional and orchestration technique employed by composer Bear McCreary to draw us further into the scene as onlookers. Humans relate more to the sound of the human voice than anything else, so choosing to bring in a female lead vocal at this point is critical to heightening the emotion of this moment for the viewer. The female lead vocal is also supported by the low male choir that originally sung Kratos' theme, representing how these two characters' journeys have deeply been intertwined, even though we don't actually see how yet. As Kratos places Faye's body on the pyre, notice that he does so with the utmost care. This is showing his deep respect and care for his lost partner. Kratos also hesitates for just a split second before bending down to spark the flame that will send Faye to Valhalla. There's also an interesting moment where Kratos' eyebrows raise, his mouth opens slightly, and his expression softens, all occurring in the few seconds that he is rising from lighting the fire beneath Faye. These are all human indicators of sadness, something that even Kratos is unable to keep hidden as he watches the love of his life and the mother of his child leave him. As Faye's body burns, Kratos and Atreus look towards each other, but never at each other directly. We see that these two still have a great deal of distance between them, and despite maybe wanting to comfort each other, they are nowhere near able to do so with the emotional tools they have available at this point in the story. Atreus reaches out and grabs a knife from the burning body of Faye, trying to keep any piece of his mother that he can with him. Since it was on the pyre, however, he quickly drops it to the ground, wincing from the extreme heat. We see that there is a burn mark on his palm, and he quickly apologizes for his actions to his father. Kratos kneels down to assist Atreus by placing snow in his hand to calm the burning and removing a small section of the bandages on his forearm to wrap his son's hand. Kratos knows that Atreus is solely his responsibility now and is taking the first steps into making sure that his son knows that he is in his care. Also, utilizing Kratos' bandages here ensures that a small piece of Atreus' father is with him alongside the piece of his mother that he is trying to hold on to. As Kratos leans down to hand the knife to Atreus, the camera breaks the line, crossing from behind Kratos' right shoulder to being behind his left. Breaking the line is the idea that you don't change the side of the characters the camera shoots from in the middle of a conversation, and is generally taboo in cinematic works as it causes the audience to feel disoriented. Exceptions can be made for specific action shots or to frame certain things in relation to the characters in a scene. Here, the crossover occurs to show Kratos and Atreus framed in front of a burning Faye. Framing them here shows us the one thing that tied them together up to this point being burned away. We also hear Faye's theme again as Kratos explains that Faye's knife is now Atreus' knife. The moment we see the knife handed to Atreus, Kratos' musical motive comes in strong to overtake Faye's, signifying that Kratos is what Atreus has now and nothing will change that. Kratos then asks Atreus, "She taught you to hunt?" Atreus responds with, "What she knew." Kratos then commands Atreus to show him, to which we see the first sign of Atreus questioning his father's wishes. Atreus relents and returns to their cabin to fetch his bow. The camera then moves to show Kratos staring at Faye's burning body. He is doing his best to avoid dealing with the pain of this moment and trying to maintain a strong facade in front of his son. We can clearly see the grief that Kratos is trying to hide from Atreus, but he can't let that be displayed in front of his son. Faye's theme comes in one final time to let us know that thoughts of her are what is weighing on Kratos in this moment. As Atreus returns with his bow, he asks his father what they are hunting. Kratos responds bluntly, "You are hunting deer." Atreus asks which direction they should hunt, and Kratos responds bluntly again, "In the direction of deer." We see during this exchange that Kratos doesn't take his eyes off of Faye until Atreus starts to move on his hunt. Kratos is still feeling all manners of emotions, but accompanies his son on a hunt in order to draw both of their attention away from the moment. Kratos is also taking this time to start teaching Atreus to survive on his own. Kratos knows that Faye likely led Atreus during their previous hunting expeditions and wants to know that, should something happen to him, his son is able to properly fend for himself. Kratos is a warrior, and he feels an obligation to ensure that his progeny is able to survive and grow into a capable warrior himself. That's the end of our analysis of the opening scene of Sony Santa Monica's 2018 opus, God of War. Is there anything we might have missed? What do you think about this opening scene? And also, don't forget, we want you to leave us some recommendations down in the comments below about which of your favorite video game scenes you'd like us to take a critical look at in future installments. God of War has been widely praised as one of the greatest games of all time, and it's become one of my personal favorite games since I finally got around to it last year. With everything we've talked about in this video, it's clear that Sony Santa Monica made a big effort to ensure that players had an opening that grabbed their attention and was filled with emotion. I'm Christian, aka the PlatinumChin, and I want to thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to 5-9 Gaming Direct to support us, and hit that notification bell to be notified of when we drop our news, reviews, and analysis in the future. That's it. I'll catch you guys next time.